The implication I offer is that we are a species that worships, and if you do not access the divine, you will worship the profane. You will worship your own identity. Lack of value, lack of connection, lack of influence. And what does our culture tell us is the solution to this? Be somebody. Spirituality for me is a survival technique. You won't get very far in this world without it. And if you don't have it in a declared, explicit, and I don't mean doctrinal way, I mean personal, but somehow connected and communal way, you will try to create God. You will try to create spirituality from your preferences.
I find Russell Brand to be one of the most interesting people to come out of the sphere of the Hollywood scene. In particular, someone who's completely walked away from it in a sense and took his spiritual path as a priority over, fame and success and whatnot, as he explains in that video. And he brings up a very interesting word, the word worship. And that's a very powerful word when you think about it. And, obviously, like, that can be automatically attached to spirituality on the basis of what that word may mean. But, worship, I regardless of your spiritual path, we are habitually beings that embody worshiping things, deities, ideas, concepts, ideologies, you name it. Especially in the last, who knows how many years we're talking here, at least half a decade, that people put their ideologies and whether that's like politics or whatever, they're putting that before their faith. They're putting that before their relationships. They're putting that before loving themselves, which is very interesting. And that's indoctrination. I believe we're all aware of the bullshit education we went through. It's nonsense. But through that education, we were pre-programmed to worship certain ideologies. And just like Russell said, that's programming to disconnect you from essentially your own God source, because you're filling that with something that when you're attaching yourself to things on a mass scale, and especially with an ideology, you're already lost. You lost, bro. Like you're done. There's just too much here to divide us. And that word worship, I think about that word every day. I really do. That's why I was inspired to make this video. I have very mixed feelings on what that word is and how I amplify that into my life. So I do agree with Russell that we are predisposed within our DNA to worship. Okay. He presents it in a very polarizing, again, this is his concept, which I grasp to. I don't completely believe it 100%, but he's saying, we're beings of worship, and you're going to go down this path or that path. And it's you're going to worship negative dark shit, go down the devil path, or the good shit, go down the God path. Which in our conceptual minds as human beings, we don't even... that's our morality. That's our human morality, assigning those things on what's wrong and what's right. But regardless of what you attach your worship to, you're going to have an intuition, an intuitive feeling. And to me, that's the God source. Thinking with your instincts and your gut. So I think about the thing, like, what do I mistakenly worship? That's the question I want to present to y'all today. What do you mistakenly worship in your life that you shouldn't be giving that much attention to? You know, for Russell, it was all those things about fame, fortune, this and that. Those are the easy surface ones. I mean, for his life and his path, that was the one that's presented to him. But what are you sitting in with your life right now that takes either a grip of you? It could be something that's an addiction. It could be, in fact, your ideologies. Are you stubborn about this, that, or the other thing? Are you always trying to put things in a box? We're in a gray area. This is a gray existence of manipulation. That's what life is. Okay? And that's what we're lied to about from the very get-go. You're lied to as a kid about Santa Claus during the most spiritual celebration of all time. We factored in this thing to appeal to children. It's like, no, why don't we talk about Christ? And all these kids should be thinking about is really Jesus, and instilling the idea of them forming their own spiritual path. You know, instead we're gonna open up fucking presents to a big fat red man that comes down the chimney. That's a perfect analogy to society. Like, come on. It's just all manipulation and lies, and the more truth we get, the more we're like, holy fuck. Like, that's I think Alan Watts speaks of this. Tesla definitely does. The more you learn about what this world is and how it works, and more intelligent you become, the more you feel like you know less, and the more stupid you feel. It's what, like, it's, they say that's why artists, creatives, people that step outside the traditional means of existence, it's like you're walking out into a path that's uncharted for yourself. Okay, everyone's journey. I you know what, I always like to think, I know this is kind of side question here. I like to think about, like, the breakdown of words, right? So they say, like, oh, if it, like, I forgot the actual term is called, but when you break down the root of the words in Latin, that's pretty much giving you the actual meaning. So when something like worship, how do we break that down as you pronounce it? Warship. It's like humans are genetically determined to worship on this earth plane. And it's like just being born. It's like, yo, you stepped onto the warship. Like this seems like a spiritual battleground, quote unquote. And that to me, that reminds me that every person that I see, especially the people that are at odds with me or I'm at odds with them, they're going through their own personal war. With, you know, well, on a spiritual level, whether they want to believe it or not. And I try to remind myself of that all the time. Like, everyone you see, there's something deep within everybody that's just, it's something that's got people beat down, just feeling lack, like that word that he said, that I felt lack of all these things. Everyone's got their battle. Okay, and it's, most of it's going to be unspoken, okay? That's just the way it is. People might tell you, they might open up to you a bit here and there, but everyone's inner battle it's a personal thing between you and God. So, what do I worship? That's a good question. I worship that pupper right there, I guess. And, in a way, I believe I guess I've worshipped music. You know, I heard many times, especially, you know, from a pastor all the way to just, you know, just people on another spiritual level. Even Nikola Tesla touches on this too. That, you know, like you all heard the quote, think of the universe in terms of frequency, energy, and vibration. If you dig deeper into what he's saying, Tesla's essentially saying, and I recommend you read his book. Like, forget most of the fucking books on Tesla are just, like, they criticize too much on his, like, personal, like, tics and things of that nature, and they say, oh, he's just a tormented person, this and that. It's like, fuck all that. Everyone's tormented, okay? Like we've been systematically, like, fed to, like, A, not believe that the man existed, and B, if you look up research and start reading books, they present his life and everything he did, but they do it in a very dark way. I don't like any documentary on him. They all suck, and 90% of the books suck. So read his book from his own words. It's this big, okay? And he bridges perfectly, and why they kept him out of, besides wanting to give free energy to the world, they kept him out of the history books because he beautifully bridged the gap between science and religion. Okay, there's not one fucking thing you're gonna read in his own book where he doesn't reference something from the Bible or something spiritually his mother taught him. Okay, I forgot where I was going with that. And so essentially, like, so that's led me down a deep relationship with sound. Okay, and he will explain that he believed that existence itself is sound. Like, we're in a sound wave, which is crazy, and he calls it we're all contributing to, like, the orchestra of life, which is interesting. And he stated he means that in a very literal sense. And then when I cross-reference that with people that are very fluent in the Bible versus there's a lot about the devil or Satan or darkness being not only the ruler of the earth realm, also I wouldn't say ruler, Christ is ruler, but it's like has dominance over it, okay, or influence. And that sound itself, and music in particular, was created by darkness, okay? And that's a tough thing to sit with, actually, especially being a music producer, okay? Because I spent a majority of my life as an adult in front of that fucking computer making music. And pursuing experimental things with sound itself, which, you know, you'll see down the pike. But nonetheless, the things I've went through and the projects I've entailed with, like, audio engineering, I every day I sit down in front of this computer, and if you're watching this as a music maker, a producer, composer, or whatever, AI prompter, you got to ask yourself, like, especially if y'all haven't gotten if you haven't achieved, like, what you believe is a level of success, you just making music is a success. Like, if you have a catalog of music, that's fucking incredible. So it doesn't matter what happens with it or who hears it. I always ask myself, I'm like, man, is this something that, like, seems so exciting and awesome and can lead to success and monetary things? The road getting there as an artist is fucking horrible. It's like, it's you make a sacrifice every day, and you're sacrificing normalcy between what's ticking in your brain, what you feel in your heart, and what you're doing with your time on this earth. There's so many other things, other paths you could have chose. I think about that all the time. I think about what I gave up, what I built my entire life with my family, and, you know, through many different means, my decision was to follow this thing and pursue art. And like, damn, I can't, like, that must, like, think of your parents, man. If you're an artist out there, like, all the things, all the playbooks about society and life and what you'd want your kids to do, and your kid comes to you and says, yeah, I want to be a music producer, or I want to paint, or I want to sing. Like, that should be celebrated, but it's a thing that's embodied with fear. So that's what you're meant with first, you know, when you start to, like, identify with that and share that with people. So I guess what I was getting back to is, like, I think the great challenge in being a music producer, okay, or pursuing an art, is that, yeah, you're falling right in line with that idealism of worship. And what Russell said was, once you get into the level of worship, you're gonna probably go down one path or another, and that's either gonna be met with influence of darkness. You're gonna be somewhere in the middle, frustrated, spinning your wheels with what you believe. Like he said, you're gonna fill that in with what you think is the pursuit, or what you think your plan is, your divine plan. And then there's actually letting go and opening up to the divine plan, okay? And I like to see myself as, yeah, I chose a very risky path. There is a path of darkness within that system. There's a path of light, and there's my path right now. And there's a concept of that 75%. It's a Buddhist concept. That was presented to me by my history teacher, Steve DeCurtis, very brilliant man. And essentially, that Buddhist concept is you always want to be leaning like 75% there to the highest achievement, whether that's the divine path or that's like success or this or that, where you want to be. The mark of 75%, that might seem frustrating to you. Like, yo, I still have a quarter of the way to go. I'm not there yet, or this or that. That 20 to 25% of you not being there or being open to deviating towards something else, that's malleability, that's flexibility. And as the Stoics would say, that's you, that 70 to 80 percentile of whether that's mentality or achievement. That's a beautiful place to be, okay? Most of what you did is behind you, and you got to this place. So now you got to ask yourself, and this is when the actual temptation really comes in. There are shortcuts and darker ways of achieving things. That's where you sit down every day to do this. You know you're a good person inside, and you're pursuing an objective thing. It's art. But as a human being, once you enter into that artistic realm, you're two roads diverge in a wood. Robert Frost. That two paths will certainly be presented to you. And I believe Russell Brand, like, he's been down that left-handed dark path. And I believe going all down, full down, 100% down the right path, even the Buddha would say, like he came back to his, to his humanity. Christ came back to his humanity, okay? We miss a large portion of that man's life, and he comes back. And like Buddha, like, we have this weird playwright of Siddhartha who became Buddha, and then it's like, oh yeah, just this enlightened being. It's like we miss the whole middle of Christ's story, and then we hear the end. And with Buddha, it's like we hear the whole middle story and beginning, and we don't really focus on the end. And what he did was he went back to the palace of gluttony and this and that, and he took part in I believe, either like maybe ruling again, but in a much looser way, because he was in fact a prince. But what he did was he left his family, okay? He had he dipped on his family, okay? And after X amount of years, that's why they call it like the middle way. Like he's like, no, I have to go back, be the spiritual being within the context of the cards in which I was dealt, and the responsibilities to my, to my people and my family. And I'm not. That's why I got to study it more. I'm not too familiar with that part of his life, but just like Christ, he said he was more concerned about disciples. It's like he's more concerned about the people that, oh no, now it's your turn to go spread these messages and help these people. And his disciples were by the hundreds and thousands. So I guess what this sums up is, within the context of spirituality, worship, or pursuing my art, is I know what my intentions are as a good person. I try to be. And I leave myself open. That middle way, you want to be right there, that 75 percentile. And I do that within my worship, in my spirituality. And that doesn't mean I have like 25% doubt. That I feel like the only doubts I'm ever presented with are within myself, not about doubt of whether or not there's a God. It's just like, yeah, okay. So I'm not sure what I was even really getting at with this. I was very inspired by Russel's video and worship and how I perceive that word. And maybe you don't mess with any of this, and maybe worship is something that is to be overcome. Perhaps maybe you shouldn't be worshiping anything. Who knows, right? It's actually interesting. Maybe, yeah. I'm gonna think about that one for a little bit. Yeah. But anyway, it's been fun. It's different.